is to take yes for an answer. A wall is an immorality. It's not who we are as a nation. And this is not a wall between Mexico and the United States that the president is creating here. It's a wall between reality and his constituents.
I think the president's made it very clear.
Yes.
There's no wall, no deal. But look, we really are prepared to negotiate. We're prepared to talk.
So we have you covered all angles now. Doug McKelway's live on the Hill. Newt Gingrich standing by with analysis. But first, we begin with Kevin Corke live from the White House there in the North Lawn. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning. It's finally Friday. We made it through quite the tumultuous week here at the White House, which continues actually at 11:30 as Democrats come here for that meeting over in the Situation Room. White House officials tell me they're hopeful that they'll finally listen to the people on the front lines, Bill, and listen and give them the resources they need to protect the American people. As for this new era of divided government, the president talking about that on Twitter this morning, and the specter of impeachment, which a lot of people have been talking about already. Democrats just taking power in the House yesterday, and this has been a talking point. Here's what he said. How do you impeach a president who's won perhaps the greatest election of all time, done nothing wrong, no collusion with Russia, it was the Dems that colluded, had the most successful first 2 years of any president, and is the most popular Republican in party history, 93%. Well, yesterday, as you know, he stopped by the briefing room for the first time, flanked by Border Patrol, ICE, and DHS officials. They say they support the shutdown if it means getting more money for the wall. Also yesterday, Speaker Pelosi said walls, as you heard there, are immoral. She said they're expensive and ineffective, about which White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders this morning said this.
I wonder if she's going to go on a crusade and take down all the fences and walls across this country. I certainly hope not. I'm sure that the people that have them around their homes, the institutions that have them, whether it's the Vatican or anywhere else, are not going to be real happy with the fact that Nancy Pelosi is calling their walls and their security immoral. It's never been immoral to protect people.
So while the White House hunkers down for the latest round of talks, Vice President Mike Pence has a message for Democrats.
Well, the American people know walls work. And we heard from border agents today in the Oval Office that in areas, in sectors where they were assigned to deal with illegal immigration, the flow of narcotics, human trafficking, all the threats to our communities that we face at our border, that once they build a wall, you saw illegal immigration, the flow of narcotics drop precipitously.
So the bottom line is you will not accept a deal that does not include a wall, if I'm hearing this right.
I think the president's made it very clear.
Yeah.
Clear indeed. That meeting in the Situation Room, which means we'll probably only get a still pic instead of obviously video, and we'll maybe even get a readout at the stakeout cameras. If we do, we promise to pass it along, but for now, back to you.
The big part of our coverage today. Thank you, Kevin Corke from the White House today. Nice to see you, Sandra.
Well, Nancy Pelosi sworn in as the new Speaker of the House, the first person in more than 60 years to regain the Speaker's gavel after losing it. Pelosi saying yesterday the House will not allocate any money for President Trump's border wall. Doug McKelway live on Capitol Hill for us this morning. Doug, is there any sign of progress towards ending this shutdown?
Boy, Sandra, it's really hard to see where the exit ramp is here. It appears that both sides are more entrenched than ever. That said, there was a sliver of hope yesterday afternoon after Nancy Pelosi was handed the gavel as the new Speaker of the House of Representatives. The thinking was that she might have more freedom to negotiate with the Republicans after having won the speakership, because she would no longer have to seek the votes of the far-left open borders wing of her party. But that sliver of hope came to a crashing thud in her first press conference last night when she said this.
We're not doing a wall. Does anybody have any doubt that we're not doing a wall? So that's it.
Contrast that with what Vice President Mike Pence told Tucker Carlson last night. He said, no wall, no deal. It does not take a rocket scientist to infer from those two comments that we are at an impasse right now in the 14th day of the government shutdown. Adding just a little bit of icing to that bitter cake, Last night, the House, I should say, passed two bills which Democrats hoped would end the standoff, one to fund 6 government agencies through September 30th, and another bill to separately fund the Department of Homeland Security through February 8th. But neither one of them included a solitary cent for a border wall, meaning both bills, I should say, were dead on arrival in the Senate. So all that happy talk of bipartisanship yesterday afternoon was just that, bipartisan happy talk. The rank and file on both sides here are extremely frustrated on both sides of the aisle in both houses.
If it were up to me, I would go into a room, I'd lock the door and say we're not going to leave until we open up the government again. It is not that hard.
It's pretty frustrating to arrive and have half of the Congress on the House side and say, like, yeah, you know, we're just not interested in getting anything done.
Not all hope lost. There is that meeting at the White House between congressional leaders and president set for 11:30 this morning. Sandra, back to you.
We are waiting on that right here in America's Newsroom. Doug McKelway, thank you.
For more, I want to bring in former House Speaker, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich with me now. And sir, good morning to you in Washington, D.C. It's great to have you on. I want to paint a big picture with you right now. Do you believe this is a situation where both can save face?
Well, no. I think the way it's being developed, Speaker Pelosi is basically aligning herself with her left wing, and I think that for her to back off will be very expensive. The president has said publicly so many times now that he won't sign anything that doesn't pay for border security, that for him to back down would be very expensive. And I think this is one of those cases where exhaustion is the only thing that's going to work. I mean, people can get anxiety-ridden. We can have massive TV coverage of every meeting. But the fact is neither side is tired enough to start moving towards an agreement. As you know, I'd advocated several weeks ago to provide a legal path for the Dreamers as part of a package that would include border security. You would think the Democrats would be very interested in trying to help 700,000 people who came here as children. But the fact is they dislike Trump a lot more than they care about young Latinos.
The Congresswoman from Michigan, Tlaib, a freshman Congresswoman, one of 2 Muslims elected this past election, was on camera last night at a rally and said the following. I just want to catch the end of this, and I'll phrase it in a question after this. Watch.
When your son looks at you and says, "Mama, look, you won," bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
Essentially, she says they're going to impeach him. Now, a few have filed these papers already for bills on the House side. I don't know where that goes, but instead of going at that, Mr. Speaker, explain to us what you think the relationship will be as it develops between President Trump and Nancy Pelosi. When you consider, as soon as she was sworn in yesterday, he went into the briefing room and congratulated her. How do you see this relationship developing over the next 2 years?
Well, I don't think we know yet. I think her left wing is going to be deeply, bitterly hostile to Trump. Many of her senior members chairing committees are going to be issuing all sorts of subpoenas. Her natural pattern will be to be tough. I mean, look, she's been a very, very successful politician. As you pointed out at the beginning of the show, she is the first person since Sam Rayburn 64 years ago to recover and get to be Speaker twice. So you know that she's formidable, you know she works hard, and you know she's tough. And she represents a San Francisco liberal view, which now, by the way, is no longer the left wing of her party. I mean, she's now sort of a moderate by the standard of the younger, more aggressive and more radical members. So she's sitting there thinking, what does she gain by giving in to Donald Trump? Meanwhile, the president is, I'm sure, frustrated, but he only has one. He has 2 tools, basically. He can veto a bill or stop it in the Senate, and he can arouse the country and convince the country. If enough people decide that they really want border security, that they really are worried about things like the illegal alien who shot the policeman in California, I think there's a point where some Democrats will start to say, look, we got to find a solution. We could be weeks away from that. This could go on easily for into February or March.
Very interesting. Another topic here. You wrote a piece at FoxNews.com about Mitt Romney's comments the other day. And, well, here's the headline. It says, Newt Gingrich, according to you, why does Romney attacking Trump is smarter than offering solutions to our problems? You conclude, I hope Senator Romney gets behind the noise and learns to find common ground for the common good. What is his objective as he sets himself up as a new senator? Well, what do you think's driving it?
I think really bad advisors. I mean, you know, it's a way to make noise, but it actually isolates Mitt and puts him in a much narrower, smaller group. There was one survey that came out about a week ago that in a primary, President Trump beats him 79-7. In the Senate itself, most of the Senate Republicans probably don't regard it as very clever of a freshman before he's even sworn in to decide to attack the president of his own party. And look, Mitt's very smart. He's been a governor. He's been a very successful businessman. He could come in there and have 6 or 8 or 9 really positive ideas. He could work with people, you know, like Olympia Snowe and Lamar Alexander, and people who are really good at bipartisan efforts. And he could make a real contribution. But to posture as the anti-Trump, I think is a really narrow career path. And I just think, my guess is he has some advisors who thought it was clever, and they're going to discover that, in fact, it shrinks and isolates Romney, who's actually a much smarter and more competent person than that particular strategy.
Thank you for your time today, Mr. Speaker. Good to have you on. Newt Gingrich there in Washington. Thank you. A lot more coming up later in the program today. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley is here in about 15 minutes. He'll come at 9:30 Eastern Time. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise will be inside that meeting today at the White House. But first, he will come here to be our headliner at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. So jam-packed show, a lot of big issues to get to, and we shall for the next 2 hours and 47 minutes.
This jobs report blew away expectations. And just seeing now that total U.S. employment topped 150 million for the first time.
Cranking.
The economy's cranking, at least here at home. So we'll talk to Hogan Gidley about that coming up. Meanwhile, that robust jobs report, we've got to dig more into it because the month of December exceeding expectations, what it means for your bottom line. We're going to break that down for you.
Also, it is being called a matter of sovereignty and national security. Can we expect progress today? What will we get at that meeting of the White House? Congressional leaders that will go back inside the Situation Room. Texas Senator John Cornyn is here to react to all that. Coming up next, live.
There are lots of things that come across that southern border that we need to get control of, and President Trump is determined to make that happen. It includes the risk that we have terrorists come across that border.
The new jobs report showing a hiring bonanza in the month of December. A whopping 312,000 jobs were added, this despite the ongoing trade war with China and slowing global growth. Meantime, unemployment rose last month to 3.9%. That is up 0.2% from November. The Labor Department says this reflects a surge in job seekers, more people out there looking for work, showing optimism about future growth.
Border security is an important part of American sovereignty and keeping Americans safe. There is a central role to make sure that we know who's coming in and what is coming into our country, and President Trump is doing the right thing in making sure we understand what's moving across that border, and we do so with enough border security so we have confidence and we can do this on behalf of the American people.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last night with Sean Hannity arguing that strong border security is vital to protecting the country. That's the message the White House wants Democrats to know. Republican Senator John Cornyn from Texas is with me now. And, sir, good morning to you. What a day it was yesterday. Where do you see this going now?
Well, I don't see much traction. You know, when people want to get to a negotiated outcome, then they'll find a way to get there. But right now, it seems to me that Nancy Pelosi has said that she wants capitulation by the president. The president's saying he's willing to deal, but they're not willing to talk. So we're in an impasse right now.
Senator Gardner, Republican from Colorado, said the following. I don't know if you're aware of his comments or not. He seemed to break a little bit. He said the following. Congress needs to take further action on border security, but that work should be done when the government is fully open. Let Democrats explain why they no longer support border security. Take that last part. He's saying go ahead and pass the bills that are on the table. We'll negotiate Department of Homeland Security into February and make it a black and white issue.
Well, unfortunately, this is a pretty black and white issue, I think, already, Bill. And what we're talking about is if we took up the House bill, we would only get past a short-term continuing resolution to February the 8th. And then the same problem would be staring us in the face again. This is a fundamental difference of opinion between Democrats who apparently don't believe in border security, who see the flow of drugs and human trafficking and other contraband across the border. They apparently don't want to do anything about it, versus those of us who say, let's come up with a sensible combination of technology, barriers, and personnel to try to staunch the flow of illegal drugs and human trafficking and illegal immigration.
You would disagree with Senator Gardner's characterization about how you frame the argument, because that's what he's arguing.
Well, I think he's correct in the way we frame the argument, but I don't see passing the House bill gets us anywhere, because the president has said he would veto it if it was passed the Senate, so we'd be back right where we are. We need to come up with a negotiated solution, but we need to get people to the table who are willing to negotiate in good faith.
Do you believe they have not been negotiating in good faith?
I believe they have not. It's clear that Nancy Pelosi had to secure the vote she needed to become elected Speaker, and that meant accommodating the most radical elements of the Democratic membership of the House of Representatives. And they are fine with no border security, and they want to. These are the same folks who want to abolish ICE and other law enforcement and do nothing about the heroin and the human trafficking that comes across the border along with illegal immigration. That's an outrageous position. It cannot stand, and we will not agree to that.
Now that she has the gavel, you're of the mind then that she's got more latitude to negotiate. That's what I hear from you.
I think that's right. I think that's right. Now that she's back as the Speaker, she does have some flexibility. We'll see whether she's willing to make a deal. I think Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, is looking to her to take the lead on the negotiations. But this is a deal that has to be cut between Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Donald Trump before Senator McConnell will bring it up on the Senate floor and then pass it.
Well, I don't know if you heard Newt Gingrich a moment ago, but he's suggesting this is going to go on for a long time.
I think Newt's probably right, sadly. This is really beyond ridiculous. It's about semantics. We all know what the experts have told us we need to do to secure our border. It's a combination of barriers, whether it's fencing or a wall or levee barriers that are used to deal with the flooding and also illegal immigration. We need the technology, and then we need the personnel. And a lot of the drugs that come across the border come across the ports of entry, where a lot of commercial trade and traffic goes. And we need additional resources there and personnel to be able to detect and stop the flow of the illegal drugs that contributed to the death of 70,000 Americans last year who died of drug overdoses. So this is a very serious matter, and we will not fold.
It's your home state. We will not fold. Senator Cornyn, thank you for your time today from Washington. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
President Trump offering his condolences to the family of a California police officer who authorities say was killed in the line of duty by an illegal immigrant. Coming up, how the family is responding.
All right, I brought in Ensure Max.
Killed apparently by an illegal immigrant the day after Christmas. The president called Officer Ranil Singh's wife, offering condolences and praising his time on the force. Ranil's brother Reggie remembering his fallen brother earlier today.
Ron was very into outdoors, so he wanted the son to start moving around, walking around ASAP, so he could take him outdoors. He was waiting for the son to walk, and it just breaks my heart that he'll never be able to see that.
Tunnel to Towers is now raising money to help Singh's widow and 5-month-old son. That organization run by Frank Siller. To donate, visit tunnelstotowers.org, the website right there on your screen.
Fox News Alert, Vice President Pence defending President Trump's plan to withdraw American troops from Syria, saying it is appropriate because the U.S. has driven ISIS out of the Syrian city of Raqqa. Here is Pence with Tucker Carlson last night.
President Trump, as commander-in-chief and as a candidate, made it clear that our #1 priority would be destroying ISIS. The reality is we have defeated ISIS. We're going to continue to take the actions that are necessary to protect the American people and our interest in the region. But the president is determined that it's no longer necessary for us to have American forces in harm's way in northeastern Syria to accomplish that.
Joining us now is Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He joins us now. I appreciate you coming on the program this morning, Congressman. So very clearly there, the vice president defending President Trump's planned withdrawal of troops from Syria based on the defeat of ISIS. What does this mean for the long-term fight against the terror group?
Well, I'm worried about it. And, the vice president's doing his faithful duty to support the president. The president, has a right to make this decision. He's commander in chief. I don't question that. I worry that this echoes a lot of what we heard when President Obama said, we're leaving behind a stable Iraq. And he talked about this new terrorist group as the JV team, not the real thing. And that new terrorist group became ISIS. ISIS is an idea. It's not just a territory. So being able to defeat the idea by continually denying them territory is important. We're in a generational fight. And so my concern is if we leave too early, we send the wrong message. But I am encouraged that it seems like it's going to be more of an orderly transition than it seemed at first.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting support. Retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor, he came out publicly and praised the president's decision, saying that our overseas commitments have been a disaster for everyday Americans. But then there was that open criticism from Lindsey Graham, obviously a Republican, saying that this 30-day pullout was too hasty. He then said the president planned to slow that down. I wonder how you expect the president's plan to actually be deployed based on the criticism he received in the wake of the announcement.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's going to be a decision that he has to make with hopefully his military advisors to tell him the best way to do it. But I think the thing to keep in mind is it's not just ISIS, it's not just ISIS in Iraq. It's also blocking the Iranian position. And Iran wants to have a highway to resupply, a theoretical highway to be able to resupply the enemies of Israel. And our position, for instance, in Al-Tanf in Syria has blocked that from happening. So it's not just ISIS, it's also the Iranian prospect. And if you ever want to get to a negotiated solution, you have to do it from a position of strength. And Syria is going to be a negotiated solution. If we leave, we basically pull ourselves away from the table of negotiation. It's a concern.
Finally, I want to end on this thought from Mike Pompeo on North Korea and get your thoughts about an upcoming meeting there. Listen.
Lots of work that is left to be done, but I'm confident that in the next short period of time, President Trump and Chairman Kim will get the chance to meet again and truly create a much better, safer America with less threat of not only nuclear weapons being launched at us, but nuclear proliferation as well.
Final thoughts here, quickly, if you will, Congressman, on what sounds like a really optimistic setup for this next meeting.
Yeah, I think keep in mind this negotiation is going to be a long time. This one is playing out publicly, unlike the Iran deal, which was bad, but that was done behind closed doors. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. I'm still optimistic. We have the right people on this case, and I certainly hope we get to a denuclearized North Korea, or else the alternative ain't going to be pretty.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, good to have you this morning. Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Just about 9:30 here in New York. Here we go, and this will be interesting. Opening bell from Wall Street hitting right now. Markets are going to open a bit higher after a blowout number on the economy that came out about 60 minutes ago. There's the bell. Take it, folks. We saw the economy. That was yesterday, right, Sandra? That's today.
There you go. That's
there we go. The estimate for December was 177,000 jobs. Well, we produced 312,000 jobs, and the month prior was revised even higher. So the economy's cooking. So we're going to get into this today and see how investors react, how the markets react. Could bring in a whole new argument about the Fed and what it does, and on it goes. But that's a pretty good number based on what we saw yesterday.
Dow up 300 points and more in the first 30 seconds of trading. Plus, President Trump gets set to meet with congressional leaders at the White House, with both sides digging in their heels. So who will blink first? Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley will weigh in on all of this. He joins us next live.
The president cannot hold public employee hostage because he wants to have a wall that is not effective in terms of its purpose.
Welcome to Atlantis, where unexpected moments become lifelong memories on an island called...
Well, the stock market is now open, and there is a lot of green out there today. On a Friday morning, the Dow, first 4 minutes of trading, up 350 points, just an hour after we learned that the economy, the U.S. economy, added a better-than-expected 312,000 jobs last month. Let's bring in White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Good morning, Hogan. The president must be pleased to see this and have it reported that this economy is soaring with more jobs added than expected in December.
Absolutely, and it kind of blows my mind that people continually are surprised by how good this economy is doing under this president. 72% of the people now in the job market actually came in from the sidelines. So that highlights just how bad the Barack Obama economy was, because so many people had just given up hope and stopped looking for a job. Now there are more jobs than there are people to fill them because of this president and his policies, and this job number is indicative of the successes and the policies he's put into place.
And of course, you're referencing the fact that the unemployment rate did go up by 0.2% to 3.9%, but that indicates that more people are jumping back into the workforce by looking for work. But it's not all good. Apple yesterday led to a severe loss in the U.S. stock market because of slowing growth in China. And they talked about the problem with trade and that there's no deal that has been reached there. How close is the president getting on this? Because it is causing global economic concern.
Well, as the president has said, China wants a deal. He wants a deal. Both countries, he's fine if both countries succeed. The problem is China is cheating, and the international community knows this. The problem is no one's actually held China's feet to the fire. The president is doing that. We're sending our team over there to discuss the economy, to discuss trade, and try and get something done. And we expect in this new year that we come to some type of agreement and trade deal with China so that both countries can benefit, and we, as Americans, stop getting taken advantage of by foreign nations.
All right, I want to move to the shutdown in just a second. Before I go, though, Kevin Hassett yesterday said something that really stuck out to the Wall Street community. He said a heck of a lot of U.S. companies that have sales in China are going to watch their earnings downgraded until we get a deal. Does the president agree with that comment? Is that really the forecast from the White House?
Look, I haven't talked to the president about that comment specifically, but what we're talking about today is the great economy that this country is experiencing for the first time in 8 years because of the failed policies of Barack Obama. The fundamentals of the economy are strong. We're moving forward in a way that no one thought possible or even probable. In fact, the predictions were all doom and gloom, and now we see, because of the deregulation, because of the tax cuts, because of this president standing up for American workers, industry, and business, that we are back and people want to come here in droves to do work and to do business because of this president.
Well, we're watching the stock market today, at least, enjoying some nice gains. It's Dow up 344 points. All right. 2 hours from now, less than 2 hours from now, behind you in the White House, congressional leaders will meet with the president. Will a deal get done today?
I hope so, but that's really up to the Democrats. Look, so far, all they're doing, quite frankly, is offering status quo solutions to a crisis situation. What we see on the border is something we've never seen before. In fact, a couple of days ago here in the Situation Room, Secretary Nielsen attempted to give a briefing to people in Congress, those big 8 folks from the House and the Senate, both sides of the leadership aisle. And Democrats cut her off, refused to listen to the statistical data that shows 170,000 convicted criminals were caught coming across the border last year, that almost 4,000 terrorists, known or suspected, coming across the border, thousands of gang members from MS-13 and other dangerous gangs coming into this country. And once they were here illegally, let's keep this in mind, about 250,000 people were arrested in this country last year who came here illegally, and those people were convicted or charged with 100,000 instances of assault, 30,000 instances of sex crimes, and 4,000 homicides. Now think about that. Those crimes are 100% preventable if Democrats would just come to the table, close the loopholes, and secure our border.
So give us the details of this meeting today, because I know I spoke to you on Tuesday night after the first meeting like this took place at the White House, and you said that Democrats interrupted the Homeland Security Secretary. So what's the structure of the meeting today? Is it a meeting? Is it a briefing? Who will be in that room? How will it be different?
Well, I'm not going to get into necessarily the details of what we expect to see or accomplish here. What I can tell you is the numbers speak for themselves. Democrats refuse to acknowledge that, refuse to listen. And that's what's so damaging here. The president wants to have a negotiation, and he will not accept anything that doesn't protect the American people. He wants to open the government, fund the government.
Right, so I'm just trying to understand the structure of the meeting today, because it really comes down to this, and whether or not the congressional leaders can get together with the president on this issue. It's becoming Donald Trump versus Nancy Pelosi. I mean,
it is, but that's up to Nancy Pelosi in this instance. The very day we were in the Situation Room having a conversation about statistical information on the crisis now at the border, it's no longer status quo, it's a crisis. Nancy Pelosi refused to hear that data, didn't believe it, didn't trust it, and didn't care.
So is the president going to approach? Is the president going to approach this differently today? How's he going to approach this?
But that's increasingly sad, because just yesterday the president had a conversation with someone in Nancy Pelosi's home state of California, the widow of an officer who is a legal immigrant, an officer of the law who was gunned down and killed by an illegal alien. Now think about that for a second. Nancy Pelosi has not tweeted about it, has not commented on it, has not said anything in the way of condolences for the family. So she is refusing to acknowledge a situation, a crisis at our border, even as in her home state of California, they are literally putting someone in the ground who was killed by an illegal alien, and she hadn't commented on it and won't listen to any information or data about the crisis we face in this country. It's shocking. She's got to come to the table and understand there's a crisis here. Even though she doesn't want to deal with the border, even though she says there is no wall, the President of the United States came into the briefing room yesterday in a monumental moment with people flanked from the national security community, from ICE, and he didn't say what he wanted. He said what those professionals, those brave men and women say they need. And that is a wall to protect this nation, among other things. But a wall is paramount. They think so. The security community thinks so. And Democrats refuse to acknowledge that.
So here we are, day two. We are in an era of divided government now. And this new Congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib from Michigan, a camera was rolling on her when she was addressing a crowd, and she used a profanity. She cursed out the president and called for his impeachment. I just wonder what this says about decorum in this new era of divided government and the new Congress.
Well, it shows you kind of what's on the mind of Democrats right now. They're into name calling. We even had one of the congressmen yesterday call the president Hitler. Now she's using obscene language to describe this president. Listen, if they want to come to Washington and engage in this type of nasty, ridiculous, outrageous rhetoric, instead of focusing on the issue at hand, that we have a crisis at our border, people in this country are dying, and those deaths are 100% preventable, then they're going to have a very difficult time in this town and with their constituencies. Because this type of rhetoric, while it may ratchet up a few folks on their side, it's not going to do anything to fix the real problems we face in this country.
All right, so 11:30, the briefing. Any clarity there, by the way, before we let you go?
No, other than the fact that what we want is obviously the Democrats to come to the table and recognize the crisis and work with us to offer a solution to the American people. We've got to have it. The American people deserve it.
That's where we are. We await that happening a couple hours from now. Behind you, Hogan Gidley, thank you.
Thanks so much for the time.
3 veterans wounded in combat unite on the Hill for the first day of the Congress yesterday, 116th Congress. Here's the photo that has gone viral. Brian Mast of Florida, Dan Crenshaw, screenwriter Texas, and Jim Barrett of Indiana. Mast tweeting, 5 eyes, 5 arms, 4 legs, all American. Crenshaw and Barrett are beginning their first terms in Congress. Mast is starting his second term, and that is an awesome shot from Capitol Hill yesterday.
There you
Share
go.
that with you. Very
nice.
Very cool.
All right, well, you just heard from the White House. Congressional leaders heading there to negotiate over the border wall, and we will hear from a Democrat on what to expect next.
Is there any situation in which you would accept even $1 of wall funding for this president in order to reopen the government?
$1? $1. $1? Yeah, $1. $1.
Here with Reaction is the co-host of the Five Waters World. He's got 2 shows. Jesse Waters, Fox News contributor.
Still just one
Jessica
show.
Tarlov. All right.
No shows. I'm just on your show.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy
Things will
New
get
Year.
better for you eventually. So, okay, Nancy thinks she's feeling it today, feeling great.
She had a pretty good day.
Oh,
Come on.
Good day. Okay, so here's the point. Democrats supported a wall before. We have all of them saying they support a wall, funding a wall. But we have a dead cop. So it gets a little serious. We have other dead Americans. We have drugs literally targeting every town and every city in the country, crossing that border. We have human trafficking across the border. We have terrorists that we have stopped crossing our border that are trying to, gang members trying to cross the border, and she's talking about $1. Direct your answer to the family of Officer Singh, who died this weekend with a 5-month-old son at home, who was killed by somebody that would have been deported if the laws were obeyed and we didn't have sanctuary cities and states. Tell his family how you feel about that remark.
I feel that it's terrible. Everyone, I think,
Nancy's remark is terrible?
About the dollar? Nancy's remark about the dollar had nothing to do with what happened to Officer Singh.
Sanctuary cities and states, the sheriff said on this program last night, in part caused what happened. Because we have them in custody and we don't deport them. They are aiding and abetting law breaking. Do you support that?
Aiding and abetting law breaking? No, but I do support a system in which people who are in this country illegally and they broke the law to get here feel that they can come out and they can work with law enforcement.
But they commit more crimes.
They don't commit. They do not
That's a red herring. No. The whole thing about, you got to have a sanctuary policy because people snitch and then you don't want to lock up the snitchers. If you drop a dime on another illegal and you're an illegal, they're not going to lock you up for that, okay? They're going to leave you alone. Really? Second of all, the minute she grabbed the gavel, she came unraveled because Trump came out, stole her thunder, came out with all the Border Patrol guys, basically called Nancy a liar. They say walls do work, Nancy, everywhere they're erected.
The story of today is Nancy Pelosi, and it is not Donald Trump. It pissed him off that she was getting all the attention, so he thought, oh, I'll walk down the hallway and I'll stand up here with my border agents and I'll try to take attention.
Is it true we've had criminal illegal immigrants that we had in custody that weren't handed over to ICE as the law provides for?
We had some instances of that.
And they have killed Americans?
They have.
And we have drugs. Well, drugs are crossing the border?
The numbers
and human trafficking is happening across the border?
Terrible things
and gangs and terrorists are trying to get into this country?
Well, it's not
Excuse me, at what point when we don't protect the border do they take the responsibility?
But the border isn't
open. At what point? It's wide open.
If the border isn't open, how did the guy get to California and then murder the cop?
Are you guys kidding me that you are making an argument that how many thousands of miles, 2,000, how long is the border? 2,500 miles?
Oh, more than that.
That entire thing is open.